In every age, the Church has been blessed with souls of heroic virtue, bishops, scholars, popes, consuls, and faithful laymen, who stood boldly for truth. Today, we reflect on 5 such champions of the faith: Saint Paulinus of Nola, Saint John Fisher, Saint Flavius Clemens, Blessed Innocent V, and Saint Thomas More. Saint Paulinus of Nola, c. 354–431, born into a noble Roman family in Bordeaux, Paulinus rose quickly in public life. He was well educated, a senator, and even became governor of Campania. But after a series of personal tragedies, including the death of his only child, Paulinus gave up his wealth and power, choosing instead a life of holiness, together with his wife Theresa. He embraced Christian asceticism and settled in Nola, near the tomb of Saint Felix. There, he lived as a monk, wrote beautiful hymns and poems, and offered hospitality to pilgrims. Eventually, Paulinus was ordained Bishop of Nola. He was renowned for his humility, scholarship, and charity. His letters to Saint Augustine and Saint Jerome reveal a man of deep faith and intellectual vigor. Saint Paulinus died around the year 431. His feast is celebrated on June 22, and he remains a shining example of how a life of privilege can be transformed into a life of service to God. Saint John Fisher, 1469–1535. Saint John Fisher was the Bishop of Rochester and one of England's most learned theologians. A close friend of Erasmus, he served as Chancellor of Cambridge University and was admired for his piety and intellect, but his greatest legacy came when he stood alone among England's bishops in refusing to accept King Henry VIII's divorce from Queen Catherine of Aragon and the Act of Supremacy, which declared the king head of the Church in England. Arrested and imprisoned in the Tower of London, Fisher was eventually executed on June 22, 1535. Just weeks before his death, Pope Paul III named him a cardinal, though the red hat never reached England. He died a martyr, declaring, "I die for the faith of Christ's Catholic Church." His feast is celebrated with that of his friend and fellow martyr, Saint Thomas More. Saint Flavius Clemens, 1st century AD. Flavius Clemens was a Roman consul under Emperor Domitian, and a relative of the emperor himself. But his secret conversion to Christianity placed him in grave danger. According to early Christian sources, including Eusebius and Saint Jerome, Clemens refused to participate in pagan rituals. For this, he was accused of atheism, a term used for Christians who denied the Roman gods, and condemned to death. He was executed around 95 AD, and his wife, Domitilla, was exiled. Their story reflects the high cost of following Christ in the early church. Even for those in positions of power, Saint Flavius Clemens stands as a noble witness of fidelity to Christ amidst the dangers of imperial Rome. Blessed Innocent V, circa 1225–1276, born Pierre of Tarentaise in France. Blessed Innocent V was a brilliant Dominican theologian and a master at the University of Paris. A student of Saint Thomas Aquinas, he became an influential voice in the scholastic movement. He played a key role in ecclesial diplomacy and helped bring peace to warring states. In 1276, he was elected pope, the first Dominican to ascend the chair of Peter. His papacy was brief, lasting only 5 months, but he left a strong impression as a man of learning, reform, and integrity. Though not yet canonized, Blessed Innocent V is venerated for his wisdom and virtue. His feast is celebrated by the Dominican order on June 22. Saint Thomas More, 1478–1535, a man of letters, a skilled lawyer, and the author of Utopia, Thomas More rose to become Lord Chancellor of England under Henry VIII. Yet More's fidelity to the Pope and the Catholic Church brought him into direct conflict with the king. Like John Fisher, he refused to take the oath of supremacy. Imprisoned in the Tower of London, he spent his final days in prayer and silence. Executed on July 6, 1535, More declared, "I die the king's good servant, but God's first." He was canonized in 1935 alongside Saint John Fisher. Together, they stand as pillars of conscience against tyranny and defenders of religious liberty. From ancient Rome to Renaissance England, these holy men remind us that truth is worth living for, and dying for. May the courage of Saint Paulinus, Saint John Fisher, Saint Flavius Clemens, Blessed Innocent V, and Saint Thomas More inspire us to walk faithfully in the footsteps of Christ. Pray for us. In the